Police in Toronto have unveiled the results of a major firearm trafficking investigation. It involved multiple law enforcement agencies in Ontario and the U.S.
Seizure of this size is definitely going to save lives on the streets of the GTA and elsewhere. These firearms are sold for 300, 400, 500% markup, so there's a demand for them, and they're sold to different individuals, different organized crime groups, and it's essentially an economic type of advantage to sell a firearm in Ontario.
So for more on this, I want to bring in Robert Snead. He's a former commander in the Baltimore Police Department and a former ATF task force member. Welcome to the program, sir. Appreciate your time.
Well, thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, let's start with, you really have experience working on task forces. What level of coordination goes on between police forces in order to pull off this kind of operation? Just how big was it?
Well, one, it doesn't surprise me that this type of operation, this magnitude, that's going to impact the community in a positive manner occurs. They happen every day. There's always joint operations and investigations. They're not always publicized. And the reason for not publicizing them is when you're going after criminal organizations, organized crime, you have to understand that those involved in criminology or criminals, they're not bound by jurisdictional boundaries, whether it's at a state, a local, or a federal level, in this case, international. So what law enforcement does, they try to erase all the boundaries, and more collective information gathering and sharing is common. And it's done every day. And it really does not surprise me at all. The coordination, in this case, from an international perspective, you have a criminal organization who's operating in between Canada, the Ontario area, and the United States. Both sides of the border have law enforcement professionals. And what's good in your country, as far as, from a crime prevention standpoint, is pretty much good. We have the same common interests, morals, and goals. We want to prevent crime before it happens. It looks like they did a well-coordinated operation, and I'm sure they're not finished yet.
Yeah, my apologies for interrupting you there. Yeah, you say that, the same common goals, but what increases the difficulty for police when it's a cross-border nature?
There are a lot of challenges. However, we have law enforcement professionals on both sides of the border. And when you're dedicated to preventing crime instead of chasing crime and responding to it, you want to do everything you can do. And that level of coordination, the overall sense of things, when you look at this picture, do you want to chop off the toes of a criminal organization, or do you want to chop off the head where the body follows? There are challenges, but you got to work through them.
When you look at the weapons, the type of weapons that were seized, they were overcapacity magazines, auto switches. Just maybe dig into those types of weapons for us.
They sound like assault weapons. They're not on a battlefield, and I don't want to get into infringing anybody's rights with the right to own them, but there are gun laws, at least in the United States. But we have to have common sense, practical laws. Are you really going to go hunting with an AR-15 style weapon that will basically mutilate the average deer or whatever it may be? But why is that weapon needed outside of law enforcement or military purposes? It's for assault.
Now, dozens of people have been arrested, hundreds of charges laid, but what could the next steps in this investigation be? Because you mentioned it's not over yet.
I'm sure it's not over. I don't have any intimate knowledge of the investigation. However, something of this magnitude, it's a small step in a larger picture. Of course, you want to get out in front of it. Clearly, some Confederates were identified, evidence was seized. Now, I'm sure, at least on the United States side, the tracing of these firearms, each weapon has a serial number, and they'll find out who the owner was, or if the weapons were stolen, if there were possible straw purchasers that took them out of the regular commerce, or they were diverted out of the proper sales. Got to find out who the owners are and what capacity did they take ownership, who had the weapons, what their criminal backgrounds were. There's so many different laws that impact state and federal guidelines. But the biggest thing is they were interdicted and they won't be able to hit the American or Canadian streets to cause harm to good law-abiding citizens.
Robert Snead, I want to thank you for helping us through this today. I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Robert Snead is a former commander in the Baltimore Police Department.